My guest today is Ned Matania. Ned has been a seeker of truth since he was a young boy. Taking apart gadgets to know how they work, his curiosity extends beyond physical life. Experiencing a traumatic childhood, he questioned life and why he should stay here. A scientist at heart, he appreciated the logical sounding explanation of materialism and atheism that life on Earth is really a lucky accident. It was learning about near death experiences through Dr. Raymond Moody's famous book, Life After Life, that turned his perspective right side up. There is a reason to be here. We do go on after physical death. There is a higher power, and we are all connected. What we do matters. Thank you so much, Ned, for being my guest. It is a great honor. I too believe that there's a reason for us to be here. We're all connected. We're all one, and I'm very honored to have you as my guest today.
Thank you. I am, am honored being here. And I'll say that I also have been helped by NDEs a lot. And without them and without people sharing them, I wouldn't be here.
Well, that's wonderful. I appreciate that. And you've lived a lifetime of curiosity, and you discovered uh, Dr. Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life. And tell me about how that how you came to know about near death experiences and what kind of research you've done on them.
And so I started out, as you mentioned, I became an atheist as a teenager because I've always had an interest in science and understanding how everything works. And so um, I I wanted to understand life and reality. And um, for many intellectual people or people who are thinkers or think a lot, atheism uh, made sense in terms of everything is an atom or everything it is made of atoms, and because of the properties of chemicals and in our bodies and brains, it basically explains everything. And so I basically thought that that made sense in terms of it explained everything. And if you add that perspective I had with also um, having a, a traumatic childhood, which I still sometimes am impacted by when uh, speaking. It's um, I actually thought about in high school, like I thought maybe life isn't actually worth it. You know, if we're just an accident of um, atoms and uh, chemicals, and if there isn't any ultimate purpose of uh, um, our life here on Earth, and if you don't have a support system or close friends or family who you truly feel um, at at home with, um, it makes you feel isolated and alone. And so it was almost a logical uh, conclusion that perhaps suicide is okay. Like there isn't any ultimate consequences. It's just a life was an accident, even Earth was an accident ultimately. And so uh, it, if I actually took my life there wouldn't be any ultimate harm because everyone eventually dies anyway. And so that's how I thought. And um, as I got older after high school, I increasingly searched for answers, and so um, I came across Hinduism, Eastern religions. I read the Bible. I took world religions in a college, and I wanted to understand everything and see if any a culture or a tradition had the answers, or also what common elements are in all of them. And ultimately, if you look at um, all major religions, and including Native American ones, several themes are universal, including a love and a compassion for everyone, including uh, uh, that there is life after this, and including a concept of karma, or like if you hurt others, ultimately it hurts uh, us also. And so I took note of all those similarities, and I thought, okay, if any pieces of religion um, are most relevant, it probably has to be the ones that are common worldwide. And so I thought about that, and I thought it was interesting, but it wasn't until I came across first mediums and then near-death experiences that really opened my eyes, and became like a true, like everything that I was looking for in terms of answers, the answers that religion didn't have. It kind of had partial answers. It kind of had actually what I thought of dead ends in terms of like teachings um, about you'll end up in hell if you eat the wrong food or whatnot. And people, of course, will explain, like in the Christian Bible, you have the Old Testament and New Testament. The old one was all about all these rules. The new one is about love. Um, and so, but even in terms of religions, even in terms of Christianity, look how many particular sects uh, there are in terms of branches, or um, different churches, and picking out which one is actually the right one. It's almost impossible, and people ultimately have to just feel what um, uh, they personally resonate with. But and so because of all that, because I saw how religion, it didn't have the answers I was looking for, and science also, over time, um, I realized it ignored or left out even valid evidence. And so, like in terms of how mediums have been repeatedly tested, including at the University of Arizona, um, to be way higher than random chance, and even way higher than professional mentalists and magicians in terms of accurately mentioning information about loved ones, or either how a person passed, or maybe particular inside jokes uh, that the loved one shared with uh, the person. Um, so um, evidence in terms of mediumship, and in terms of how near-death experiences are not hallucinations, has been growing for decades, and yet still um, science often sweeps it under the rug and ignores it. Some scientists are looking at it, including Dr. Raymond Moody. And so when I read his book, A Life After Life, it was a huge eye opener because as I read it and people talked about the immense bright light and how it was so intelligent and knew everything about them and um, how they often met their loved ones in spirit. It was like an eye opener because I felt if this is real, um, it it definitely makes life important. And so like um, after I learned about all this and I read these books and eventually I watched experiencers sharing on YouTube. Um, all thoughts side completely left because it hit me that it is important. You know, our lives here matter, and that like I thought personally, I need to do the best that I can. You know, it's like I'm here, even if if my life isn't how I want it ultimately, I can always improve. I can always work on myself. And so I hope that answers your question. I know I said a lot.
Yeah, definitely. That was great. So it was quite a process for you to have to go through all these traumatic events and have these negative feelings in order to ultimately realize that life is so important. It's so worth living. We're all connected. And and so now these near death experiences, they introduced you to these concepts. After you read Dr. Moody's book, where did you go from there in the near death experience realm?
I think after um, his book, I found others, and eventually, like I came across um, Dr. Brian Weiss's Many Lives, Many Masters, and others, and it kind of opened up a whole spiritual gateway in terms of like I purchased so many books, and so I looked at those, but also I eventually found stories on YouTube, including I think one of the first ones I ever saw was from Ellen Dye, and her last name is actually Dye, but it's almost a synchronicity that she had an NDE and died and came back. But and hers was in a car accident, and so I saw her story, and then I saw others on YouTube, and it just really solidified that real people are having these, and I've had them. Like hers was, I think it happened in the 80s, and and that it's real, and up to perhaps millions of people, even in the US, have had them, but most people, because of what happens if they try to open up and share it with their family or their doctor, they're almost always, except for exceptions, but they're almost always told, oh, it was a dream. It was you were on drugs, and so it wasn't, important, and they basically shut down because here is the most amazing, powerful, intense experience of someone's life, and no one wants to hear about it, and even it offends some people. Perhaps I've heard of experiencers who share it in church and they're completely shut down of like, oh, this is evil. It's a Satan putting an illusion, and so it hurts so many people. And so um in terms of your question about where I went, it was it was learning more of these experiences, and then eventually, I found IANDS, and my first conference was in 2012 in Scottsdale, Arizona, and and I attended there, and yeah, it's a beautiful because what often happens when people die and come back is they have a heart opening and a intuition opening. And so like oftentimes experiencers have almost like a sixth sense. Well, I don't want to say almost like, because we know that it exists. Intuition is real. Energy is real. So yeah.
After reading all these books and learning all of about all these experiences, going to an IANDS conference, meeting people in person that have actually experienced near-death experiences, um, what kind of feeling did you have about near-death experiences then? Did you find that there were certain aspects of them that you were seeing frequently that you think were important in helping to point humanity in a certain direction to bring wisdom to the world?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, almost all experiencers, they talk about love. And even prior to hearing about NDEs, like it's often especially with the holidays or whatnot, like a Christmas is often associated with peace on earth, and so love is often talked about, but as everyone knows that in living life or in the economy or business or just even in families, like people have disagreements or rifts or whatnot. And so love is often hard and tricky on earth. Almost all experiencers talk about how important love is, or compassion, or kindness. And so including not just for the people in our circles or families, not just for perhaps like our state or country or culture, but for everyone. And I think it's hard because oftentimes politically, many people either were taught to, or just over time develop a sense of like, how common it is where we see other countries and we think we are us and they are them, and and we can be enemies. Some countries are just enemies, and people often have prejudices or whatnot. NDE experiencers, when they come back, they have like this huge epiphany of like, no, it's for everyone. Like love includes everyone, including the people that we don't particularly like or agree with. And I think, and they all talk about it, like, if we look at what Jesus talked about, it's what he said too. It's what like all the masters of the ancient times were talking about. It's what, when I talked about world religions and how the common threads in all of them is love. I don't think there's any religion that is like, you should hate these people or whatnot, or like the purpose of life is to just accumulate wealth and control, economically. Like the purpose of life isn't ever that. And a lot of experiencers who do, like, who are wealthy or who are successful, I've heard a number of them who were even, earning a lot, and perhaps either CEOs or really high up, and their whole life was about to work and achieving. And when they had their experience, they're like, no, it's not about that. You could have the largest bank account, but it's spiritually meaningless. Like it's how you treat others. It's how you treat. It's why are you actually living and trying to earn so much in the first place?
Yes, I have noticed love to be a major theme in almost every near death experience story that I've heard as well. And like you said, there's so many divisions, whether it's race or religion. Well, you're Christian and I'm Hindu or whatever, or across the world, maybe someone's Japanese and, we're American over here, and none of it matters. We're all the same spiritually. We're all one. We all come from the same source. It doesn't matter our belief system, um, politically, religious, where on the earth we were born or anything. We need to band together, and maybe that's part of the reason that near death experiences are becoming more uncovered now. More people are having them. Um, have you done any studies of like ancient history where there are near death experience stories, or is this something pretty new? Since I know they've been happening, but Dr. Moody's kind of just brought them to light to our consciousness back in the 70s when he coined the term. And maybe there's a reason why our world needs them now. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, totally. And in terms of of your question about like ancient times, I think that Moody also talks about how uh, um, within the historical text and records, there was an ancient soldier. I forget if he was Greek or a different ethnicity, but he was a soldier, and his name was Ur, and he was hit, and he died on the battlefield, and then he woke up. So it's almost like our first historical record of an NDE, and his message all the way in the ancient BC times was was similar. Like he came back and he realized like it's not about the war. Like he was changed, and I haven't um, read his story in years, and so I forgot exactly, but over time these have happened, and I think my personal theory is that like these have always happened, even up to the 1800s, even 1700s, like when people used to have like scarlet fevers or a malaria, and they die and then they come back. Like I think it's happened a long time. It's just that for so long, um, our society hasn't been ready or open. And even up until like 1950s and 60s and 70s, uh, a lot of experiencers were even sometimes warned in their NDE by like the guides, uh, we're sending you back. Don't share about this because of how people might put you in a insane asylum or something. The good news is that it is finally changed. And so, and as your whole point about like, I think I think it is true in that a lot of these experiences are exploding out into social media, and people are sharing more and more because I think humans have reached a population on Earth where we're kind of everywhere, and we have so much power over things that we need to remember who we are and what's important, because we could easily, with our atomic bombs or our hydrogen bombs, which are so uh, destructive, we could easily uh, wipe ourselves off the earth and most life. And so I think the message of NDEs is also coming out because science, or I should say mainstream science, has kind of failed us in terms of it hasn't been honest. It's been ignoring these, and basically uh, keeping up a status quo of life is an accident, and our brain is creating, chemicals, and so there is no ultimate reason uh, that compassion is important. You know, like if we look at our economy and whatnot, compassion is like all the way down here, and then like uh, money and achievements is up here. And NDEs, you know, like if everyone lived according to NDEs, we would have love up here. And I think, you know, it would also help economically. Like we wouldn't have so many people struggling and homeless, and you know, and just like our uh, I don't want to get political, but in terms of if we think about um, which politicians are supporting a compassion for everyone and which aren't, and if we think about also which ones are more honest and which ones are not, even though uh, even though people often joke about how all politicians are dishonest, but if you see patterns over time, some are definitely more. And oftentimes, like even in religious text and in NDEs, a love is often associated with truth. You know, oftentimes it's God, love, and truth. And so if any of those are not um, in balance, it isn't ultimately healthy. You know, it isn't ultimately love uh, when there is dishonesty. And so that's a whole tangent. I forgot your question even. I went on so long.
Oh yeah, no, I think you answered it perfectly. It was about why we are seeing so much about near-death experiences in modern times versus in the past, and Dr. Moody bringing that to us in the '70s and opening our eyes. But I think you nailed it. There's a lot of, I don't want to say misinformation, but maybe just missing information that we're given or not given as we're growing up. And I think we've become spiritually starved, and our culture um, isn't one that nurtures spirituality. We're fast paced. We got to make that money, got to pay the bills, got to go out there and hustle and grind, and uh, so much business happening. You know, our relationships are business oriented, which is money instead of people oriented nowadays, where we think about how much money can I make with this person versus what kind of deep, true connections can I make with this person? And I think that's something that probably is starting to change. I'm seeing that a lot more now that that's changing, and it coincides with the near-death experiences. You know, um, not that the more near-death experiences I see, the more people are changing, but just in general, our era of living, you know, from the '70s, the generations born since then are, I think, changing the world. We're becoming more passionate, more compassionate. We're becoming more empathetic towards people. And it just happens to be a time where Dr. Moody introduced us to near death experiences. So I definitely think there's some energy connected there. What about this great awakening that everyone's talking about? Do you think that has something to do with it, that people are going to start waking up and we're going to have a new golden age where there's enlightenment and peace on earth and love all around?
I love that you asked that because this is a topic that is important to me as well, because you know, like oftentimes in life hype is common. And so, you know, there's often the hype and the reality. And I bring this up because if you remember back in 2012 and everyone was like all excited about it, and it was, you know, and we thought, okay, well, once this happens, like we're just gonna shift into a new era. And we saw, well, we woke up the day after and we're still us. And so, but also, um, I think And so to answer your question, uh, yes, we are shifting, but also it requires each of us to do our own work or our own like even if that work is softening. It's like because a lot of people who like you said have had missing information like other their whole lives have been taught, achieve, compete with others and advance um and so they're always stressed out and they have everything. They have amazing homes and cars and everything, but they're always unhappy. And so sometimes that whole work of bringing us into a new era of peace is to find the peace within ourselves. And um, and so, to answer your question, like I don't think that it will be like an instant switch or like we'll one day wake up and the world is amazing. Like it's I think our conversation here and everyone watching on YouTube is is one video of millions out there that people are watching and they're becoming curious, like, oh wow, like I wonder if there is more to life and it isn't just about like, so many people are having to work two jobs or more to pay rent and mortgages that are just ever increasing and where's all that money going and how come everyone is so stressed out, and so I bring that into the picture because it's like in a world where it is more enlightened and is more compassionate, the people who are in power will not be the people who are just power hungry, which is kind of what we've had. We've had people in power who are so power hungry that they just either fairly or honestly or unfairly and dishonestly take it. And so, you know, there are actually studies about how it's common for like people at the top, and this is a generalization, of course, and there are so this is not everyone, but there is a tendency for personality types who are psychopathic to actually end up at high levels because they're the ones who are most eager for it. And so, because a lot of us are just like, I'm happy if I have, if I have friends and a, a decent life, but people who are either so driven or even wounded in childhood, and because of that, they kind of are overcompensating, and that ends up in their personality, end up in power over all of us, and and that is kind of the root of why there is so much imbalance because like there is enough abundance for everyone to thrive. It's just that it's being hoarded and has been for a long time. And have you heard of Mellon Thomas Benedict?
No, I haven't heard of him. Tell me about him.
And so he had an NDE in 1982, and he had brain cancer. And so the reason I bring him up is because when I was talking about the economies and like how come our system is so currently not fair or like certain people are struggling a lot and certain people are not, and it isn't about how hard they are working. And so Mellon, um after his NDE, he basically changed his whole perspective. He used to be cynical and he used to think that humanity was a cancer on the earth. And this is how I used to also think because I saw all the crime, I saw how politics is and how ugly people are often are. And I thought, what's the point? I felt like humanity was hopeless. That's how he felt in the 80s. And he got brain cancer. And after he died in hospice, and then he woke up again after 90 minutes, just about, his whole thinking changed because he learned a lot and he talked to the light or a source or God, which is the higher power in NDEs, and he learned a lot. And one thing he learned was that there is enough abundance on Earth for everyone to thrive, including technology. Like our technology is good enough if we put it to the right use, it could easily support everyone, and like we wouldn't have to work. The people who wanted to work could definitely do that, and there are people who love that, and people who don't. And so and so and so there is enough abundance here. It's just a matter of our system, because of this lack of awareness that what we do matters and how we treat each other matters. It's set up to support the greedy, and the whole saying about how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer is true. If you look at the economics, like it's ingrained in our system, and how it currently works, and it can be changed. And I think that your question about like how we get to a more happier world and a more enlightened world is when enough of us realize these dots, and connect them, and realize we don't have to vote for people who are not helping that, or we don't have to support people. We don't have to make actions ourselves, or even words that contribute to divisiveness. We can actually support unity.
I think that's beautiful. Yes, unity is kind of the heart of love, for us to all be one and united in our goals, and realize that we do all come from the same source, that um, we can make the world a happier place. And I think what you were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it starts with peace within yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah. And for a lot of people, just hearing about NDEs is a huge help with that, because that was in my life too. Like before I had this knowledge, I was an atheist. I wasn't an angry atheist or bitter atheist. I was just an atheist because I thought it made sense. And but I was stressed out. I thought about died because I felt there wasn't any purpose. I felt a lot of intellectuals who are high power, high earners, who are making so much money, um, they actually think that, like this, that there isn't a purpose. Like if you can step on others to get ahead, that's okay. Or that's even encouraged. Like in business, that's encouraged in many places still. And so that's why I personally like my passion is to spread the word about NDEs, because one, you know, these aren't fairy tales that are only meant for dreamers. This is applies to everyone, regardless. It's like even serious, you know, business people. This information is important, because one day when they die, or sooner, and when they hear the impacts of how they hurt others, or maybe when they're on their uh, deathbed reflecting on everything, and realizing how, they didn't live in their heart, and especially once they cross over, like uh, they will have their life review everything. And you know what often happens is people have regrets, or because it isn't about like heaven or hell, or like, oh, you messed up here, you are cast out. It's not about that at all, and that's a whole topic that I love. I would say that life uh, 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 reviews are one of my favorite subjects.
Well, let's talk a little bit about those life reviews. What have you found? Is there a common thread that runs among the life reviews that you've heard about in near death experiences?
Oh yeah, and I think that like they show evidence that there is truth, and I'll say loosely, right and wrong. And I say that because now, like a lot of people think that there isn't ultimately a right and wrong, which I can understand it because it isn't about following a rule and you'll end up in hell, but you know, um, it's about knowing that certain actions have happened and how they did impact people, animals. Like it's it's mind blowing if you think about how in life reviews everything is like recorded. It's almost like everything like is a 3D, like ultimately high quality, like somehow in how the universe works, everything's recorded, which is amazing and fascinating. And and so it's recorded accurately. And so when something happened when you were 8 years old, like our personal memories often don't remember that, and yet it's recorded, and so when people have their experiences, they can actually remember or see on that particular day uh, when they were 2 years old, when their father shouted uh, at their mother and they had an argument. Like everything, all the words, everything exists, and the emotional impact of those was real and still is. And so um, when people review everything, it's seeing truth. And so oftentimes now in spiritual communities, they talk about how if you just envision something, you can um, or let's see, how can I word this? In terms of like as uh, if we believe something intensely, we can make it happen. And I would say that there is truth in that, but also like oftentimes what ends up happening is people believing um, uh, that their words or actions aren't, say, for example, making someone uncomfortable or hurting them, because in their mind, they think everything is their way, and they're happy about it. And I bring this example up because the importance of becoming sensitive and listening to others, listening, it isn't just about us. And also spiritually, there's a belief out there that we are basically everything and other people are just in our imagination. I love that life uh, reviews show us that isn't how it is. There are others, it's not just us imagining everyone. And it's important and it's important because like I think um spiritual bypassing is happening a lot. And I lived in San Diego, and I know over there, like there are spiritual groups over there, and many groups that focus on like light workers or love and light, like have a right intention, but they're often don't always have the most realistic ideas. And I say that because there are ideas of how we're all God, we're all love, but then they forget, like they aren't actually seeing other people, they aren't actually hearing other people. And so because of that, they kind of are numbing or blocking out the world. And in doing so, they're causing misunderstandings and not actually growing spiritually like they think they are. And I say that because I used to, I think all of us, we have our journeys. We start out kind of materialistic because that's how most of us are brought up. And then we become spiritual. And then we realize even within spirituality, there are different levels, or, there's a whole lot of illusions that are happening too. And there are a whole lot of egos involved, and they're masking it and saying that, uh, um, it's um, uh, basically a gaslighting, and just whatever a person says, it just happens. Like I am big on reality, and so um, spiritual bypassing happens a lot where people ignore real issues, or they ignore other people, or they ignore their own feelings deep down, and they basically their ego um, becomes imbalanced. And I say all this because when NDEs have a, a life review, or when all of us die, it's like seeing everything completely without our filters, without our ego. And so if we, for so long, we're living in an illusion and telling ourselves and lying to ourselves, like, oh, I'm perfect in this, I'm awesome, which is awesome if we're positive, but there is a point if our vision of ourselves isn't accurate. NDEs will often show us how we really were. And it's humbling because a lot of people are like, for so long, I had this image, of I I thought that I was amazing and like you know, uh, so advanced, and in their and then they realize, hey, I'm just like everyone else. I have areas that I'm still working on as a soul. And so um, it's important because um, it shows us how every interaction we have matters. And it isn't just about how we see it or want to see it. It's about what it actually was, and that there is an actually was. It isn't just like because I I think it's this way, that that's how it is, or because I think that this other person, you know, just has to get over it, and I'm better than them, or something like that. Um, those like illusions uh, of ego, comparing, or all that fall away. So yeah, that was interesting.
Do you think in near-death experiences when we can actually feel the the pain or the suffering or the trauma or whatever we've inflicted, even the happiness and the joy on others? I've heard a lot of ND experiencers or NDEers say that they can actually feel the feelings of the other person. Do you think that is pointing us in the direction of kind of trying to prove to us that we are all one?
Exactly. And Daniel Brinkley, have you heard of him?
I've heard of him.
And so in his NDE, he used to be a bully, and like I think uh, um, when he was in military and strong and powerful, his ego was strong too, and he I wouldn't think twice of beating someone up, if he was angry at them. And he thought, because of how powerful he was, that, that's the purpose in life, is like, alpha and whatnot. And so in his NDE, he was hit by lightning, um, and he basically had a huge humbling experience, because all the times he beat people up, or he caused harm, he felt that. And eventually, he actually met with Dr. Raymond Moody, and they became friends. I think this was in the late 70s or 80s. And Raymond Moody helped him a lot to integrate his experience because of his, let's say, fall from grace in his NDE, when he felt how he treated others and how horrible it was, and how he had that whole ego of like, I'm I'm awesome, and I can beat up anyone, and whatnot. And he thought that was highly valued, and he realized that wasn't at all. And And so he changed his life around, and now he actually often helps homeless people and veterans, and he sometimes feeds them meals and whatnot. And he talks about how he knows because of his experience that all the times that he's helping others, he will also get to feel that help. And he talks about in his NDE, he was basically told, we are the difference that God makes here on earth. He's like, our purpose, our missions, it is basically like this. If God couldn't make it today, and he sent us, what will we do as an expression of love? It's like, are we gonna, if someone is hurting and we can easily help that, are we gonna help them? Are we gonna ignore them? Are we going to focus on a temporary pleasure, or like what matters, which will help everyone, and including our hearts and souls?
So in knowing that we're all one from these experiences, I feel like it's it's part of that great awakening that we were talking about before. I think that it will take peace within ourselves, and also knowing that we have to treat each other with dignity, with respect, with love, with compassion, how we would want to be treated. And isn't that the golden rule in the Bible? Um, what about the afterlife? What have you come to any ideas or theories about what happens after we die from learning about near death experiences?
The afterlife is something that I I hear so many ideas about, like, and so I'm trying to figure it out in my own way also. But I've heard, and my current theory is that we kind of have. It's almost like a lot of experiencers, they say that our life on Earth is like a dream, or this is the illusion, and that's actually our real life. And so we still have our personalities, like, how some people love being funny, and so are still you like that on the other side, or some people are quiet, strong builder types, and over there they can help out in that way. I've heard that we still have our, like, our even jobs, but they're jobs that we we like and that are natural to our energy, um, and that we can help each other and even grow. Um, I've also heard that because of how beautiful it is over there, like, oftentimes it isn't where we uh, grow a lot, and that we come to Earth if we really want like a boot camp experience of, like, okay, I want to level up. Because even Mellon in his NDE, he talked about how, as beautiful as it was over there, and it is, it's like everything's at peace, you have almost anything you want, except you can't really grow easily. It's like you're not challenged. And so eventually, sometimes as souls, we get bored and we're like, you know what? I want something a little edgy. I want a little adventure. And of course, it comes with a pain, on Earth, because it's hard on Earth. And we come to Earth, and he's like, even though as amazing as it was, and a lot of people, if they have an NDE, they wish they could stay there because of how amazing it is. But he was like happy that he came back, because he's like, you know what? As amazing as it is over there, I know that I'm here to grow, and that I can only get this here on Earth. And so I'm going to use the rest of my time on Earth as much as I can to get that value. And so I think, a lot of experiencers talk about other lifetimes, even other places. Like, it's not just about Earth. Earth is a tiny dot in the whole universe. It's so immense. And so in terms of, in summary, like the afterlife, I guess, is like actually life. And this is like a field trip or an adventure on Earth.
I've heard that a lot of cultures call our life on Earth a dream. And near death experiencers also have described this as more of a dream-like environment versus the other side, which felt more real. And that's exciting to think about. Um, so you've become quite an influential person in the near death experience community and the culture. Tell us a little bit about what you've done to put together some resources for people who are looking for more information on near death experiences.
And so um, back in 2013, I started the near death experiences group on Facebook. And initially, I started that as a place of collecting articles and videos and anything that I could find related to NDEs and putting them in one place. And over time, because of people's curiosity, it has grown. And so right now, there's about 180,000 members, and there are larger groups out there which encompass more like one of them is called Life After Death, and it's about all things after death. Mine, I focus particularly on NDEs, and so it's more focused, and I try to enforce that because I want to screen out a general spiritual ideas and concepts and focus on the NDE, especially anything related to science or evidence about them. But outside of that, you actually inspired me to do a little more because I have a busy day job in completely unrelated industry, software engineering, and so I I um I've started a book on uh, my own journey and my search for answers and finding them in NDEs. And I also have a book planned. It's like an NDE reference book. And hopefully in the coming uh, years, I'll put that out. Like how I feel is I want to help and get the word out more. I know that so many people are launching channels and podcasts, and which is awesome. And so I'm thinking, what is different about me or my background that can help others? And so um, I definitely uh, I I want to do more. So far, uh, the Facebook group near death experiences, which has a picture of the stars and cosmos in the background, is my main focus.
Well, and it's been a great help to so many in such a large supportive group. I'm a member of the group as well, and it's priceless resource for people who want to learn more. You even invite people to share their stories and to ask questions as well. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, and um, also like I focus on um, kindness, and it's hard on the internet because people are people, especially on the internet, and so um, like I focus on kindness, and if there are disagreements in terms of like some people are religious and some people are not, and there's often like the whole conversation about hell and are you going to end up in hell and not or whatnot. And in all of that, like in my group, I try to enforce kindness as much as possible because if you listen to any NDE, they talk about how that's like the most important thing. And I just wanted to put that out there. And sometimes we also do virtual chats on Zoom or a Google Meet, and I want to do more. Um, but yeah,
That's beautiful. Do you have any last words of wisdom for my viewers?
um, I always love Trisha Barker's in her NDE and her message afterwards is to remind us to be more like children. And because if you think about adults, we get our egos and we build them up and we think we're important and serious. And her message, and like a lot of NDEers, is to lighten up. And the spirits and our angels often are trying to lighten us up also. And we forget, like, they also have senses of humor, including I'll say a God or like the higher power. Like in a number of experiences, he's actually either laughing with us or laughing at us. And I put an asterisk. He's not laughing at us in a bad way. It's almost like when you're a parent and you have a toddler and they do something acute or something, and you kind of chuckle at that. And so God often has that perspective with us also. And so because and now often I tell people, where do we get our senses of humor from God? And so it's all, it's like being uh, more like children, and also valuing nature more. Um, and let me see if I wrote a note here for, um, oh yes. And so our, so for anyone out there who's like, okay, this is amazing, I'm inspired. Uh, what do I do? If you imagine yourself, as Danian talked about, how you are sent here to bring a little more of heaven onto earth. If you want a mission, or if you want to add a bonus, a quest, like you have your job and all that, but you're like, I want to do more. How do I help? If you imagine, how can I bring a little more of heaven into earth, or to people who need it, who need either money or a smile, like how do I bring that to earth? Because ultimately, like our exercise here, or our mission here is to do that. It isn't about escaping the earth. It isn't about like ascending out of it. It's bringing the light here.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for being my guest. I am I'm very honored to have a piece of your time and to pick your brain a little bit about NDEs.
I loved it.